Hey guys, Sai. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. On our channel, you can find interviews, podcasts, content on a variety of subjects. We've got shows on mental health, football, films, TV, wrestling, music, and much more, including conspiracy theories, which is what today's show is about. This will be the sixth episode on conspiracy theories. This one's on one of my favorites, which is the moon landing and the Apollo conspiracy. Just before I bring in my buddy and my co-host Rhys, just to let you all know that next week I'm recording first of a new series on serial killers. First subject is Jeffrey Dahmer, so that's going to be quite cool. Bit dark, maybe not one for the kids, but then maybe not many of my shows are for kids. Couple maybe did well with the CBBS guy. So to join me to take us down the rabbit hole, paranoia, secrecy, and just general lies is my co-host Rhys Pycroft. Welcome, buddy. You right?
Right, Si. Hello, everyone again.
Yeah, we're back. It's we're still recording this on a different day, and it's super late because Rhys wanted to watch the football. But we're not going to talk about the football because I don't want to talk about football.
And Rhys didn't get to watch the football anyway.
He didn't even watch it anyway. He didn't want to go to sleep. But yeah, we'll just pretend that football never happened.
It'll still be the same result tomorrow, mate. You know that, don't you? Well, probably for about the next 365 days, I guess. They're still going to be champions.
Sorry, though, mate. I'd rather them win the Champions League every year than ever win the Premier League ever again. So
next year is our year, mate.
You got that tattooed on your wrist.
Forehead,
next
mate.
year.
Chris Miller reminds me every day.
Next year. Right. Little disclaimer as usual before we go down the terrifying and weird road to conspiracy theories. Want to point out that just because we discuss a particular theory, it doesn't mean that we believe it to be true, agree with the point of view, or in any way think that's how it went down. We're simply here to discuss the popular theories and the evidence presented by people who champion them. Can't tell I'm tired. So, like I say, one of my favourite ones, the moon landing. But we thought rather than just do the moon landing, we wanted to talk about space generally. And then, as I was like doing a bit of research and going through some stuff, I was like, Jesus, there's loads of like conspiracy theories just linked to like all the Apollo missions now. So I think we'd probably end up doing a secret space show separate again. There's so much to go through. Like obviously we did the aliens one, and then we didn't have time for crop circles and animal mutilations, and we did another show. And like some of the subjects they cross over a little bit. Like we talked about the big flying triangles and stuff, which will come up a lot in the secret space one. But like the Apollo ones are dodgy, mate. I'm telling you, there's some real interesting stuff.
It's a minefield, isn't it, out there for them ones?
Oh yeah. So obviously, the space race was a big thing in the 60s, and let's face it, the way the media portrayed it, at least, was that Russia were winning the space race. And I think that's why a lot of people think that the moon landing was faked. The moon landing in particular was faked because Russia were winning it. And Kennedy had made this big hoo-ha of, like, we're going to get to the moon, we're going to be the first ones to do it. But I mean, just before we get to, the big one, Apollo 1, there's a conspiracy in that straight away. So obviously most people are familiar with the names of famous NASA astronauts, the ones who pioneered all that, the space program and whatnot, led the first lunar landing. You got like Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, John Glenn, Alan Shepard, all basically the ones that people know. But there's one name that is less familiar with people. But when I did the research, I think he's a lot more important than any of them. His name is Gus Grissom.
Gus, yes.
So what? So I'll just go through like what happened to them so people know, and then we'll talk about it. So Gus Grissom was the second man in U.S. history to fly in space, preceded only by Yuri Gagarin and Alan Shepard. So to cut a long story short, basically, he was a big part of testing and all these different things, doing stuff in water, trying to make sure that certain things were in place and working. And he was complaining, saying, "This is not going to work. We're not getting anywhere. It's just not working." They had a capsule which sunk. They had another one where they would practice it underwater, and the suit was leaking. There was a lot of problems, and he kept bringing them up to NASA and his bosses, and they weren't listening, and they weren't listening. So then he called a press conference, just him off his own back, and publicized his concerns, which then meant that he had put himself right in the firing line then, and not long after he died in a fire. Now, within like the first few hours of this incident, there was people straight away saying that there's something dodgy here. The crew reported a foul smell coming from their oxygen system, their breathing system, as well as a lot of issues with the communications. Grissom was noticeably aggravated with the technical difficulties, and he was recorded saying, "How are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings?" Because just like basic radio control, isn't it? And he called the module like a bucket full of screws. He was very, very critical of it. And he had shown his frustrations in the days leading up to the day he died. He had supposedly told his wife, Betty, that if there were anything, a serious accident in the space program, that and it would likely involve him. He also was said to have he would put a lemon on his, he planted a lemon tree on his property, and he would put a lemon and hang it on a coat hanger in the spaceship, because he basically was saying that the whole thing was a lemon, as in it was a waste of time. So that's him really. It's I think it's quite a sad story because, he obviously volunteered for that program and to be a spaceman, and he wanted to be a part of it. And all he was saying was that he didn't think that they were going to safely be able to do it. And he was, obviously he was right, because they were having problems with the capsule sinking, the spacesuits, the communications, and then he died. What says you, mate?
It does sound very, very dodgy, doesn't it? Let's be fair. I think I remember watching something about it before. What was his name? Virgil? Gus was his nickname, I think.
Yeah, it might have been.
I got a feeling his name was Virgil.
Yeah. It's Virgil Ivan Grissom's, and his Gus was his sort of shortened nickname.
Yeah, I remember watching something about him before, and apparently he knew a lot more than what he'd released as such. And I think that the way it points, because it was a simulation as well, it was probably one of the safest simulations to do in the world. You're at NASA.
Yeah.
They're the best. Okay, accidents do happen, but it was a simulation. Why would it be fully loaded with all the toxic gases and things?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And it caught fire, and it was him and two other guys died. And I mean, he nearly died. He nearly died.
Was it? It was asphyxiation.
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, from the top. It was something to do with the something toxic in the cab that enacted with the fire and caused the asphyxiation for them.
Oh yeah, I got you. So he nearly died before that as well, because they did like a test, like a test just where they go up and down, and they malfunctioned
in the ocean.
Yeah, he landed in the ocean. I mean, that so like his concerns were real, Now you're
At the
telling
time, though,
me
there
that
he was slated by the public, aerospace, everyone, because they all blamed him for losing that pod, and they said he panicked and opened it early, etc. But I think it was they didn't recover the pod for about 15 years from the bottom of the sea or something like that. And when they
mm,
recovered it and done whatever test they did, it was proved the hatch was faulty. It wasn't him that opened it.
all right, okay.
So he was
So
right, it was faulty, but everyone slated him.
this is his wife. I think his wife wrote a book about him, but also his son called for, he's been quite recently been calling, not like in the last 20 years or so, been calling for like an inquiry into his death, because they never did an official inquiry. They just announced that he died of asphyxiation or whatever, and there was some issues with the simulation. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Surely, if something of like that technical, where it could be so many different things, there's so many different stages to the computers, and everything's like the oxygen levels and the carbon dioxide, everything's managed by computers to make sure it's at the right levels for the astronauts to survive. So you need to do like a big, huge investigation and go through it step by step to find out where the malfunction was. Now, just because there wasn't like this big official, like a tribunal type job, doesn't mean they didn't do all the tests and they didn't find out what happened, but they never did an official investigation, if you were. Um, Obviously, with NASA's funding generally, conspiracy theorists claim that NASA's faked the moon landings to avoid humiliation, ensure that if continue to get funded. NASA raised about 30 billion US dollars just to go to the moon, um, and yeah, it's a money making machine, and it has been since '61 or whenever they announced it.
That was the first ever book wrote about the conspiracies, wasn't it? The $30 billion hoax.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and there's been whistleblowers out of NASA who've said the same. But I mean, there was two people, Mary Bennett and David Percy, who wrote a book called Dark Moon, Apollo and the Whistleblowers, and that was sort of went through all the different known and unknown hazards of trying to get to the moon and all the different things with NASA. And they said that NASA would not risk broadcasting an astronaut getting sick or dying on live TV in a prime time slot with literally the whole world watching. Just wouldn't happen. So they said, but like obviously the counter argument to that is given that NASA would obviously incur a great deal of humiliation if they were shown that it wasn't live. Afterwards, they'd look stupid and they'd be open to criticism, and
They,
obviously they could cut
I,
feeds as
I,
well.
I remember that argument, but in my eyes, they'd only need a 5 second delay. If there
Yeah,
was an accident, whatever, they turn the stream off. So I've always just pushed that argument aside. I can't. It's not a justifiable argument there.
I think that's one of the ones which you put down too. Yeah, it's a reason, but it's not a reason where you say, yeah, that's the reason which makes me think they faked it. That's
Yeah,
just like another thing added on to the many things.
yeah. There, when you sift through the information, that's one of the bits you just don't need to know.
Yeah, yeah. So before we go through the some of the other stuff, I think I mentioned this to you in one of the other films. Remember I said about the alien which was found, the female alien which they found, and I said
Yeah,
was in a documentary. And then
yeah,
after that, I said that there was this guy who'd made a documentary, and it showed them with like a black cutout, um, and the camera's at the back of the spaceship, and what they're doing is they turn all the lights off in the ship, put the camera towards the back, and then over the window they hold like a black sort of crescent cutout to make the Earth look like it's night and day. so it's like half black, half dark, half thing. But what
Yeah.
they do is in this clip, it shows you like them using the cutout to fake it, and like the arms come across. So I found out what the documentary was, not with the alien, but with the cardboard cutout, and it's called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." What it is, it's basically like 47 minutes. This guy, and he goes and speaks to all the astronauts who landed on the moon, and basically tries to catch them out. And I can't remember which. I think it's Buzz Aldrin. He shows him that video, but obviously he starts the interview off. They're just watching, and he's saying, "Oh, so when's this?" And he's saying, "Well, we're so and so miles from space, or this is that." And then gradually, he kind of clicks that what it is, and he loses his temper. He goes like, "How'd you get this? It's a classified video." Blah, blah, blah. And he gets really aggressive. And I think on the way out of the hotel, then he punches him in the head. Buzz Aldrin does but it's a really interesting documentary because the guy who made it has gone way above and beyond, and like all the different bits he finds, and he tries to expose the space, the landing, NASA is fraudulent, and he somehow gets to interview these astronauts. They don't speak to each other, or he must have had them lined up day after day, so they didn't have a chance to warn each other. But he interviews them all, and he interviews this doctor. But it's excellent watch if you're interested in like moon and stuff. Even if you don't believe it's conspiracy, there's some things in there which can't be answered. Like, why would you need to fake that shot? Because you're there, you've got a camera, you're in space, you're on the way to the moon, so you don't need to fake that shot. And that's one of the biggest things for me, is why do they need to fake these things if they went? Now, I say that one thing which people say is, or the reason they may have faked them is because the cameras got damaged when they go through the radiation belt and this and that and the other. Well, then, fucking say that. Say it got damaged, so, we couldn't get the film, or show the damaged film, and say this was our film, but it got damaged coming through the radiation belt. Don't
I
fake
think
it.
the government in any country, organisation, whatever you want to say, I don't think they can be totally honest about anything. Ever. Even when, it's the perfect opportunity for them to be honest, and it's the only way to do it is be honest. They still can't be honest.
Yeah. So the film's premise is that basically he's saying NASA's perpetrated this huge fraud, because the perception of the United States could land men on the moon before the Soviet Union, which would have been this big, huge victory in the Cold War, since the Soviets had been the first to achieve a successful space launch, which was obviously Sputnik 1 in 1957. The first manned space flight was Vostok 1, which was 1961, which is again the Soviets, and again the first spacewalk was the Soviets as well. So, they were under a lot of pressure to get it done and to catch up with the Soviets. In addition to that, a victory in the space race would also not just bring JFK's vision of the winning the space race and landing on the moon to fruition, but it also took took the eyes off people who were starting to wonder about JFK's assassination. There was starting to be some grumblings about, why did he die? Who killed him? Is it what they said? All of a sudden, you've got this big, huge space thing, because he obviously he died before they went, didn't he?
Yeah. Sorry, mate, it was a bit delayed then. Like froze.
It also focuses in the film on the Van Allen radiation belt, which is obviously, that's an area of the radiation is so hazardous and intense surrounding the Earth that people can't get past it. And this is a big thing for the scientists and the professors who say it's faked because they say it's impossible to get past. And obviously, it's a big thing. It's a big.
That's probably the biggest
obstacle.
question I've got towards the moon landings and the hoax of it is how did they get through that belt and come back through it?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? But not with the technology we got
spaceship
now.
wasn't made of lead, was it?
I know,
That's
mate.
the
It
only
was made
protection
in
pretty
tin
much we've
foil
got
and
against
aluminium.
radiation. It's how did they do it?
What you say about what it was made of, like that's a big thing for me. Is like when you look at the pictures, it's made of like aluminium and it's foil, and that's a big, huge thing for me because I know now 2019 you can get this super thin, strong, metals and silicone and all this type of jazz, but that's not what it's made of.
No, but even
You know,
now, they're easy.
we're not going to the moon now with the technology and the equipment and the materials we've got now, but
Yeah,
they
well,
did it
have you
then.
seen Trump has pretty much ordered NASA? We want another moon landing by 2024, I think it was. That's what Trump has come out and said now.
Well, at least they've got the technical video software to make a better fake this time,
Yeah.
anyway. So,
Oh yeah. Seen the
but I mean,
have you seen that Anton Deck film?
oh yeah, Alien Autopsy, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one, that isn't it? But like the other thing is as well, mate, is like okay, so let's go at it from a slightly different angle. Why haven't we been back to the moon? If we were able to go there in the 60s, why haven't we been back there? And there's three reasons, which are generally out there. One, if it was fake, so they never went there, and that's why they've never been back. Two is that NASA says they deleted the the stuff they need, what was big, like the plans, if you like, to make the spaceship and all this type of jazz, which
No, not by now and ever.
that's weak. And
That's
then
the
the third
one.
one, which is like people who believe it, is that when they got to the dark side of the moon and they landed there, there was aliens living there, if you like, and they basically said, "Don't come back."
Do you reckon they said it in that voice you just used?
Yeah, Cardiff accent.
I
Just said,
was going for an alien Arnold Schwarzenegger.
don't come back, but
Don't come back.
Yeah, I can't think of another reason why they haven't been back.
That has always been my top reason. Someone has told, or something has told them not to. But that would mean it was all real.
Yeah, and do you think that would have leaked from between now and then?
To be honest,
Someone,
I think if they encountered something on the moon, I don't think they'd have said they made it to the moon.
yeah,
That's the thing the
I
government
think they
do.
would have just said, "Oh, it turned around," or they lost the footage, or whatever
Yeah,
it may be.
definitely.
So, um, these are some of the deaths of NASA personnel. Okay, so in a televised program about the moon landing hoax allegations, Fox Entertainment listed the deaths of 10 astronauts and 2 civilians, which were related to a manned spaceflight program, which were basically killed or alleged to be killed, and as part of a cover-up. So you had Theodore Freeman was killed ejecting from a T-38, which had suffered a bird strike in October 64. Elliot C. and Charlie Bassett was another one with a T-38, had a crash in bad weather. Gus Grissom, Ed White, Roger Chaffee were killed in a fire and died of asphyxiation during a plugs-in test preceding Apollo 1. So yeah, it was literally just a test. And then these are some of the. Then there's a couple of like car crashes and just different dodgy reasons. And I just think it's similar to the JFK one. I think we forgot to touch on actually with JFK is since JFK, since he was assassinated, there's hundreds of people who literally have been killed in freak accidents who were like witnesses who would have some type of first-hand knowledge of what they saw that day, and they've died in like freak accidents. And I think what this Fox program was trying to angle was that perhaps these people were killed in similar types of accidents, shall we say. Okay, let's go to the actual moon landing, because obviously there's a lot of bits and pieces. Some of the big ones, you've got the what's it called? The flag, like waving when there's no atmosphere. That's a big one. I think the only explanation I've seen people give for that is that it's just where he puts it into the ground, it's just moving. But I don't really buy that, mate, to be honest, because it's literally like it's shimmering as if it would on Earth, basically.
I'm sure I've seen somewhere as well that the picture was taken whilst one of the astronauts, they're saying, had just kind of gone past it.
Yeah.
But
it shouldn't move.
It shouldn't at all. It shouldn't even be sticking up, should it?
No.
It should just be down.
Yeah, and it's and then you've got things like who was filming Neil Armstrong. There's, I think, one of the videos, they're all in the shot. And it's like, well, who was filming him? Because they shouldn't be able to film at that point because there was only 3 of them. One of them stayed on the ship. Footprints in the moon dust, because they're really well preserved despite there being no moisture. So, like, if you step on dry sand, like really, really dry sand where there's no moisture, the footprints don't hold as much, do they, as they do on a wet sand where it's completely.
I also remember about that. They compared the footprint to Neil Armstrong's boot, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And people are still pushing that argument now, but there was some kind of extra rubber sole or something like that the astronauts put on their boot to walk on the moon, which matched the actual thing. So that argument should have been dropped years ago. I love a conspiracy, you know me, but if the evidence is there to suggest there is no argument, kick it out. I'll play devil's advocate on every one.
Another one was that one of the astronauts who went to the moon, I forget which one it was, took a picture of his family in like a vacuum sealed bag and then left it on the moon. And then one of the next missions who supposedly went there, it was still there, and they took a picture of it, and it's like, well, that the atmosphere wouldn't. If you put a photograph in the oven, it shrivels up and burns, and at a not particularly high heat, but the heat from space would have been catastrophic. I know the moon is. I don't have to look that bit up because
it depends what it was put in. What material was it put in?
But then, like, I know you can get like heat-proof bags and stuff now.
Yeah, but we're talking, things we're buying Tesco's heat-proof bags, but we're talking NASA here. It could be some type of heat-resistant polymer gel, like a millimeter thick.
In the 60s, though.
Well, 70s, they're always 10 years ahead.
Yeah, maybe I'll buy that, maybe.
I remember watching that on a program, the one about the picture, and they were all the things that went through my head. So, to me, it's a possibility.
So in some of the photos, the crosshairs, like you get crosshairs, like you get on a
And
shooting
then,
game
yeah,
or on like a Polaroid camera. They appear to be behind objects. Now, obviously, that is just physically impossible unless it's been tampered with some sort of manipulation of the photograph, and they've added something in, because it's
yeah, but
impossible for any photographed object to appear in front of the grid.
straight
Um,
away, I've got to throw that argument out straight away because, I mean, come on, if NASA are releasing fake photographs, do you think they're gonna have some guy who can't see properly looking at that photo and going, yeah, that's all
but
right for me to go out?
but once it's out, it's out. No,
Yeah, but it
you
wouldn't have
can't
gone
take it
out,
back.
would they? If they're doing a
Yeah,
fake photo,
but this is it, isn't it? It's like, because it's physically impossible for it to happen, because well, these cameras are fitted with a special clear glass plate with like a reciprocal etched on it. So there's no way that those crosshairs can appear behind the object. Physically impossible.
oh yeah,
Uh,
totally.
so I mean, there's
In
something
my eyes,
somewhere.
that one there, I think someone's made that photo themselves to debunk the moon landing.
But I believe I'd have to double check that, but I believe that it was, you know, it was released by NASA. I think I'd have to double check that though. Um, and because the effect, it can only happen if you've like pasted something in or copy and scan stuff, and they're not originals. So it's that to me that is dodgy, only because I know the process and I know that it can't happen.
Oh yeah,
But
and it's just photoshopped in, but you will have some expert out there who'll say the way the light refracts off this and whatever it might be. And bear
so,
in mind, on the moon, light is totally different to on Earth, isn't it?
well, let's
You
go to
know,
the
so
light then. So there's a picture of one of them sort of on the steps of the spaceship, um, and it's fairly well lit, the photograph, but he's like in the shadow of the spaceship, and the time it was taken, there should be no light. So there's no way that they didn't have floodlights or anything like that. So there was no way that photo should have been lit enough for us to make out the steps and the person, and it's like a really clear photo, um, which says that there's some sort of artificial light in there.
I don't know the time of day or where the sun would have been, etc. But obviously, the sun does light up half of the moon,
Yeah, but I
pretty
think the
much.
point being that the time of day when they took the picture was that it was, should have been pitch black.
If it was going to be pitch black, they'd have lights on the spaceship, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but the ship, they only landed part of it, didn't they? And like,
Yeah,
I
but
see what you're saying. They could have
yeah,
used. There could have been some
they
sort of
they
light,
would have timed
some.
it to within like 3 seconds of when that landing was going to be. So if they timed it and they knew it was going to be dark there, they're not going to send a ship that hasn't got lights. You
No,
don't send Stevie Wonder to go pick your wallpaper, mate.
this is true. This is true. But there's other things with lights as well, isn't there? There's like the like shadows in the wrong direction, or more. Like you'll have like the astronauts in the foreground, and their shadows are all which one direction from the sun. But then there'll be stuff in the sort of foreground which has got a shadow going in the other direction, which obviously, which
Again, though, that could be explained from a million different reasons of light refracting off a suit, the spaceship, whatever it might
I
be.
think, but not for a shadow. The only way it could work is if there was some light coming from a different direction. And I think the only way it can work is if I'd have to look at the photo again. But if this space buggy or the spaceship, which I think it's the ship that's got lights, because I'm pretty sure the buggy didn't have lights. So like if the ship's not in the picture, then I suppose you could say, well, yeah, the light's coming off the ship, to cause the extra light source. But if the ship's like at the back of the photo, then that's a problem because
Yeah, but
that's
okay,
isn't it?
I'm gonna be
Artificial light.
I'll be devil's advocate again. You know, like in Antarctica, for argument's sake, they'll have an ice base, but their paths will be lit a lot of the time by just a pole stuck in the
Yeah,
ground with
but
a light on the top.
mm,
They might have had one of them on the moon,
mm,
and I'm
not
sure
sure
the
about
I'm sure the buggy did have lights,
enough,
didn't it?
enough to cause like a artificial shadow, like a full blown shadow though.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to be that bright a light to cause it, would it? Depends how close they were to it, if it was shining directly on them. I know I'm
Yeah,
coming up with all these arguments here, but just for the record, I think the moon landings were fake. I just love being devil's advocate, mate.
yeah, no, I know. I think we both agree that there's pretty. I think it's implausible that they went to the moon. I gotta be honest.
I think we've been on the moon, but I don't think there's footage that anyone's ever seen of it.
Yeah. I could kind of go with that as well because I believe that I say I believe because I've watched so much of Rich Hall. Um, but like from the stuff that he's talked about and shown on his shows, I believe that the reason they still like even now with Trump, they bring up all the rockets and go back to space because they don't want you thinking about the spaceships they've got and the technology they've got, which I believe that they've got the capabilities to go to the moon in these huge triangle spaceships which go at Mach 10 speed, but they're still going on about like Elon Musk is going on about like rocket ships. It's basically large fireworks to get us to the moon in 2019, and I believe that it's like a distraction for the Joe public to what they can really, what they're really capable of and where they've really been and what they can really do.
Mm, I think America are prime examples of the show off in me.
Yeah, they are, but if people think that they're like they've got all these amazing like think some of just all right, just think of some of the like the top secret jets which have been like declassified over the years. You compare them and what they can do to like these rocket ships, which are just like you've got to take all this fuel up and you've got to do this, you've got to break into, and you've got it's bullshit, mate. They've got these I forgot what they're called, big black triangles, but like they're powered by those the three balls on each corner, and it's like a magnetic gravitational force thing,
Yeah,
which gives them the flight and the maneuvers and the speed, so they don't need fuel. Um, I can't wait till we do the Secret Space Show, mate, because that's going to be really good. Obviously, I didn't look at that stuff now, so I can't remember some of the details about it. But obviously, one of the other things which I think is interesting, I'm not sure if I necessarily take it as like a reason as such, is the quality of the photos is really high for the 60s. Now, I know NASA 10 years ahead, all that type of stuff. But like, if you think like just cameras, say like the newspapers, the newspapers in the 90s, say, if you look back at those pictures or like what you're in the newspapers, they're not like HD quality, mate. They're not great.
they're
And
not, but I remember that.
that's 35 years later.
If you look back at the newspapers at that time, the main story pictures would be of a lot better quality than the rest of the newspaper because all the reporters would go out with their little cameras.
Yeah, of course.
And
I
if it's a
get that.
picture of the Royal, something like that, they have a high profile camera. Someone like NASA, when they're going for moonshots, you can have one of the best cameras on the earth.
Yeah, and I suppose now NASA they're only going to publish the best photos.
Yeah, and
They're not going to publish the.
nowadays a lot of them have been touched up and remastered a bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, but it is in. I find that interesting because they're all really good photos, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah, but they've all them good photos have been out for donkey's
Yeah,
years.
I mean,
And
yeah,
like CGI and
touched on
effects
that
and
now,
things
haven't they?
like that back then were quite crap, weren't they? Let's be fair.
Well, we'll get to CGI now when we get to Mr. Kubrick. Um, so yeah, they used like high resolution cameras. They had the top cameras of the time, as it were. There's no stars in the pictures, which I think is an interesting thing. Conspiracy theorists contend that NASA chose not to put the stars in the photos because astronomers would have been able to work out, whether the photos were taken from the Earth or Moon by means of identifying them and comparing them to the celestial position and the parallax to what where they would have been at that time and stuff. But I mean, astronauts. When if you watch that, have you ever seen the first interview they did after coming back from space?
I have, but I can't remember it, mate.
They just look so shady. They just look like really um, unconvincing. Just like they look like three blokes telling lies, but like not quite sure of the lies they're supposed to be telling, sort of thing. And the one guy, it's the least famous of the three. I can't remember his name. I want to
Glenn
say
Allen? Was it Glenn Allen?
I want to say Ed Gein, but that's wrong because he's a serial killer. I think
Glenn Allen,
uh,
Arthur
yeah,
Shepherd?
Glenn Allen might be, I think. But
Or
anyway, he
Arthur
says
Shepherd? I
when he
think
was on
it's the other one.
one of the journalists asks him and says, "What were the stars like?" And he's like, "Oh, don't remember seeing any stars. Didn't see any stars." Yeah, in his book, a few years later, he says that I'll never forget stepping onto the moon and seeing the stars all around the sky and this, that, and the other. But like, and then you can't see any stars in any of the pictures. Now, if you go out your house now and you look out, I guarantee you could spot 20 stars in 5 minutes. But
Most nights, yeah. But even say he didn't see any stars on the moon, when he's writing a book, he is going to spice it up a bit and say, I saw this, this, this.
yeah, yeah, of course.
You know,
But what I mean,
that's just the
they should
argument
be able
against that argument.
yeah, yeah, of course. No, but what I'm saying is you should be able to see him in the pictures. Like, there's no reason for no
Yeah,
stars to be
because
shown.
there's no atmosphere around the moon and clouds and things, is there? That blocks the view of them. So the only way, again, it could be explained would be when a picture was taken, the light refracted, and that's going to be my argument for everything.
Yeah, that's stretch. That's a bit of a stretch, mate. I think with
Oh
them
yeah, totally. That's
stars, like you should be able to see them. I think, and yeah, it's just weird. And like the astronauts would talk, I'll talk about like seeing stars as with the naked eye during the lunar daytime, and they regularly discussed seeing stars on the spacecraft on the way there and there back, but you never see them in any of the pictures. Now, to me, if I was going to space, that's one of the things that I'd really want to get a picture of. Is like the stars from close up, not close up, but like closer. Because everyone looks up at the stars at some point in their life and thinks, what the hell are they?
yeah, yeah. And they say, don't they? Most of the stars we look at aren't even there now.
Yeah, and like the cameras, even back then, you could you could light up the background really well,
Yeah,
or you could force the foreground to be brighter, so you should still be able to see those, a couple of stars, just something.
I think the technology NASA had though, if they wanted to plant stars on there, a computer program would have simulated exactly the size of them they should be and planted them on there.
Yeah, but like, why can't you see them? I can't think of like a reason other than your light refraction stuff.
Well, it could be. What if the picture was taken sort of facing the sun? You're not going to see any stars.
Yeah. So
You know, in our daytime, we don't see any stars. If the sky's lit up, you don't see stars.
yeah, but there's no daytime picture on the moon, is it? All their pictures are dark, isn't it? So you should be able to see stars at some point.
You'd think so, but if the pictures were taken sort of facing the moon, facing the sun, and there's a slighter bit of sunlight coming over the curve of the moon, it'll block out your view of stars ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, the astronaut who's taking the picture, he might be looking through a camera lens and see no stars at all. But if he turns his head like 90 degrees, he might see a sky full of them.
Mm. Maybe. So let's have a look. What else we got? So there was a resident of Perth. I've never heard of this one. The resident of Perth, Western Australia, a lady named Una Ronald, which was the pseudonym created by the authors of the person who wrote the article because she didn't want to be named, said that for 2 or 3 seconds she saw a Coca-Cola bottle roll across the lower part of her lower right quadrant of her television screen that was displaying the live broadcast of Apollo 11. She said that several letters appeared in the Western Australian newspaper discussing the Coke bottle incident within 10 days of the lunar landing. And then it sort of says no one's ever been able to find a recording or a newspaper reports referring to this, but several people have been known to say it and say they saw it. And yeah, there's also flaws in the story, which obviously she had to stay up late to watch the moon landing, so she could have easily sort of dropped off and dreamed it and then woken up and thought it was, you know what I mean? Like when you're watching TV and you're like dropping off. So that one's a bit weak, but it's an interesting one because obviously, like, there's loads of people who, every time NASA uploads a picture or a video, they go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And obviously, when we get to the Mars stuff further down the line, there's a lot of stuff with the pictures in those, which sort of might indicate that maybe they were taken on Earth. But that, I don't know, that's a bit weak for me. But it's like another sort of thing which several people saw by the sounds of it. But yeah, like I say,
You say about the pictures being taken on Earth. I've been to there's a place in Lanzarote, an active volcano called Mount Timon-Fire.
Mm.
And when you drive over it, it's like it's like you're on the moon, mate.
Yeah.
You know, the pictures we see, yeah, it's where they film a lot of like I think Moonraker was filmed there. Loads of like space type things were filmed there.
All right.
And that's just on a mountain in Lanzarote. And honestly, when you get to a certain point of it, you can't see no other land, no sea, no nothing. It's just like you're on the moon.
And then in one of the photos, someone put it through Photoshop. I forget if this was off the moon landing or just a space photo of an astronaut. They put it through Photoshop, and if you turn the contrast really low, you can see if stuff's been pasted in. So, like, you can see if there's 2 pictures put together, or because there's like an outline of where they blended it in or whatever. And one of the photos was shown to be completely fake. I can't really think of too many.
The thing is, one photo, yeah, maybe if someone turned around and went, look, every single one of these photos is fake.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a big difference, isn't there?
Yeah, one isn't enough for me.
Yeah, that was when I said about who filmed Neil Armstrong as well. Like, who filmed him stepping onto the moon.
Yeah.
It's always a big
that
one for me.
Always got to me. Who was the first man on the moon? The cameraman. But no one ever mentions the cameraman. It's like Bear Grylls. All right, he's awesome at what he does and that. But you got to think, everything Bear does, there's some guy stood next to him doing it all fucking one-handed, holding a camera. That's the cool dude. Never gets mentioned.
So, like, some of the things with the environments, the astronauts could not survive the trip because of exposure to the radiation from the Van Allen radiation belt and the galactic ambient radiation. So, like, conspiracy theorists suggest that they just wouldn't, human beings wouldn't survive going through that level of radiation for that amount of time. And I've got nothing really which convinces me otherwise, because
the only answer
made of
aluminium,
aluminium. The ship was made of aluminium.
or maybe they were wearing some type of suit that was so protective. The ship could have been made of a metal that was just not protected them, but it didn't crumble under the radiation. But they had suits that protected them.
Yeah, I can kind of buy it. I just find it, and like the cameras would have been damaged by the radiation also.
Again, what if they were in a protective case?
I know the actual film was kept in like metal containers to stop it from fogging, which is what happens when film becomes radiated. But like the actual cameras, I think would have been damaged too. But it's very difficult because you don't know what they were stored in. You don't know. It's very difficult because you are ultimately going on what NASA says and what you know about sort of space and moon and things.
Have you seen any answers from NASA anywhere of how they got through the radiation belt? Convincible answers?
No, not really. I was just looking then to see if there was, because I've got some of the like explanations for these things, and obviously you've said some of them, but there's nothing really. Obviously the bit about the metal cases for the film. So like this doctor guy, Philip Plate, said that it is possible, but it didn't say how. Just said it's possible for them to survive that amount of nuclear energy.
Anything's possible, but unless you tell me how, I don't believe it.
It's difficult, isn't it? The Apollo 16 crew could not have survived the big solar flare firing out when they were on their way to the moon. But NASA says that no large solar flare occurred during the flight. There were large solar flares in 1972, but not during Apollo 16's flight. So that's like, if you believe NASA, basically. The flag was placed on the surface by the astronauts, fluttered despite there being no wind on the moon. This suggests that it was filmed on Earth, and a breeze caused the flag to flutter. Bart Sobrell said that it may have been caused by indoor fans used to cool the astronauts, since their spacesuit cooling systems would have been too heavy on Earth. Okay.
I think NASA would have released a photo of that flag flying if it wasn't real as such, though. Because, you'd have all them boffins, one of them would have clicked and gone, hang on, there's no atmosphere.
Yeah, you'd think, you'd like to think so, mate. But maybe I sometimes just think that these people just think that Joe Public's just so stupid.
Right, when you've just said about their space cooling system, what if there's a vent on it that's blowing out somewhere?
Yeah, I think that's what they was sort of trying to say. The one of the things is that the flag was fastened to a pole which sort of goes up, and then it's got a metal piece going across. So like a rod going across the top. So it's like a upside down capital L.
I think, if you're sending people onto the moon for the first time and you go, we'll take a flag, and someone's going to go, but there's no atmosphere, you're not going to see it. Someone's then going to go, well, put a bit of metal in it for now.
Yeah, like that makes sense to me, that they take a pole with a rod coming out to make sure the flag was flying. Doesn't really allow for why it was moving, though, because there's no atmosphere, no wind, so it should just be It's like a vacuum, isn't it?
The only plausible answer to that is the little rod that's holding the flag is so thin. There is a vent on one of their suits that's blown air in the exact direction of it, and it's wobbled a little bit.
Yeah, I guess. There was a lot of like mechanical issues, particularly Apollo 12 suffered with a few. There should have been more than a 2-second delay in the communications between Earth and the Moon because the distance was 400,000 kilometers or 250,000 miles away. The round trip light travel time of more than 2 seconds is apparent in all the real-time recordings, but this does not always appear as expected. There may also be some documentary films where the delay has been edited out. So basically, what that says is there should have been more than a 2-second delay at certain points, and there wasn't. But maybe in some documentaries which have been shown since, they've edited it out for time constraints or clarity or not wanting to have dead air. However, so I understand that the documentaries over the years may have edited that out, but when it's live, it shouldn't have. It should vary, shouldn't it?
Yeah. But it's like you say, they could have edited a few seconds out.
Yeah, but not
Just
live. Like it's so hard to.
the thing is, there's not many people who actually go live. There's usually a few second delay, even with radio, everything. There's that
Yeah.
few second delay in there.
Hmm.
Just so they can catch something before it happens. And NASA probably would have had a team of about 50 people watching it. So I think, they did have, say, a 6-second delay, and they've cropped off 4 seconds.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. That's we can't say either way. I think it makes sense to me that as they go, as they're traveling to the moon, when they get to certain points, like if they're on the other side of the moon, that there would be a longer delay for the signal to bounce.
Oh, yeah, I totally get
And
what you're
while I
saying.
understand, while I understand that there's like a 5-second delay on the live broadcast, it's too hard to edit those 5 seconds in time. So what they tend to do is, like, for instance, if you've got like a live broadcast or radio and someone swears when it's before 9 o'clock at night, they'll just cut the program and then put it back on, like after that part's gone, because they haven't got time to sort of do the editing, take it out or bleep it out. Sometimes they can just about bleep it out, but like if it's a longer thing, they just cut the program and then bring it back when it's sorted. So they wouldn't have been able to edit like the time delay, I don't think. But yeah, it's just a tricky one, mate. So let's finish off with the rumor of the rumor is that Stanley Kubrick is accused of producing the footage for Apollos 11 and 12. He had just directed 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was the first film to use I forget what it's called, where they have the background and like the whole, like, you got like a screen and then the foreground is like props and real, but the very background is like a screen.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. There's a name for it. It'll come to me now. So like it was, really advanced special effects for the time. And it was claimed that when that was in post-production in 1968, NASA secretly approached him to direct the first 3 moon landings. And you can kind of see in some of the film and the pictures that it does look similar to the effect.
Yeah.
And yeah, part of that might be because his effect was so good, but
Yeah, I think that's just people putting two and two together and coming up with five. Because other than people accusing them of that, nobody's actually, I don't think, come forward on Kubrick's side to say, yeah, they did approach him, have they?
I'm not sure. I vaguely
I
remember
don't
something.
remember seeing anything or hearing anything anywhere. I've heard that accusation loads, but
However,
nobody on
what he did
Kubrick's
do,
side has ever come forward.
yeah, but what he did do is in The Shining, and one of his other films before he died. Apparently, so the sort of the story goes that he felt guilty afterwards. So in his later films after that, he would leave clues within the films referring to lies and to moon landings and to space and to NASA. um, and particularly in The Shining, there's like a whole documentary about The Shining and its secret meanings,
Yeah.
as to the Apollo program. I just want to see if I've got a list, but yeah, I think no one's come out. I don't think on his side. I vaguely remember his wife saying something about it, but I can't find anything about that. But there's loads of articles about that. Look, at the time, if you needed someone to fake that, he was probably the man to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Genius and way ahead of his time for filmmaking. I can't say whether I 100% believe that he was involved.
I think if he was, someone would have come forward by now. There's
Yeah,
always a member of the family who comes forward when they die. Always.
there you go. So there's a website called Secrets of the Shining, where this guy states that Kubrick's The Shining is a veiled confession of his role in the scam project, and this thesis was a subject of, obviously a lot of what's the word? Surprise. It's,
I imagine millions of media students have studied that film.
yeah, yeah. Um, so there was a film in 2015 called Moonwalkers, which is a fictional Rhys,
Yeah.
account of CIA's agents' claim of Kubrick's involvement. Um, yeah, which is like basically like a play on it. And we talked about that with the Illuminati and the New World Order, is that they do like to have little hints and tips and things within things
Yeah.
to tell you what they're doing, if you believe it all, obviously. In December 2015, a video surfaced which allegedly showed Kubrick being interviewed shortly before his death in 1999. The video purports to show the director confessing to T. Patrick Murray that the Apollo landings had been faked. Research quickly found, however, that the video was a hoax. So yeah, there's nothing solid out there. There's some sites where they sort of try and uh, prove it or link it, and I have watched the documentary where it sort of tells you the links and the things in The Shining, where it's like room numbers and you know that the usual types of
Yeah.
uh,
But
symbols and
I've seen interviews with Kubrick and things like that, and he seems the sort of person who do all that just for a giggle. You know, it's
yeah. But then equally, he also seems like the guy who, if he did feel guilty about it, might try and slip in some secret stuff into his film.
he just said something on his deathbed, mate.
Well, there's rumors about his death, wasn't there? So like, there's that as well. Was he
Yeah,
killed because he was
he was
gonna
getting to
spill the
talking.
beans? Like so, because it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, obviously, it's a lot to try and fit into an hour, so we tried to just sort of skip through it all. Um, so, final word, Rhys: is the Apollo moon landing real?
I don't know if the Apollo moon landing is real, but I think the footage is all fake. like I say, I think we've been on the moon, but I don't think that any of us have actually seen genuine footage of us being on the moon.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I think
I don't know why yet, but that's my thoughts. But I've got no genuine answer why.
there's loads of good documentaries out there, guys and girls. I advise you all to watch them. As always, I always recommend Rich D. Hall because he tries to base all his documentaries on evidence as opposed to like hearsay and conspiracy theories. And he's also very open to being proven wrong when a couple of times he's sort of come to a conclusion. Someone has written to him, giving him some further evidence, and he's changed his. He calls it a hypothesis rather than an opinion because he tries to, look at the evidence available. Whereas obviously here we're just discussing everything we can find and what people are saying.
And it's our own personal opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys. So we'll be back next week. We've got the first episode of the Serial Killers podcast starting next week. I've recorded 2 shows already with 2 ex-Premier League footballers. Got another one next week. So a couple of them will drop. I think one will drop next week, which will be the Willie Boland one, which is a mental health in sport one. We'll have Conspiracy Theories episode 7 next week and Serial Killers episode 1. You can find Rhys on Twitter at SureCeltic. You can find us on Twitter at acecast_nation. The quickest way to get our content still is youtube.com/c/acepodcastnation. You can follow us on Facebook. Up to nearly 5,000 now. We're on 4,920 odd followers. So let's get us up to 5,000. We're up to 300 YouTube subscribers. So let's just keep spreading the word, keep telling people what we're about, and we'll keep adding content and shows. You can also download the audio versions on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all that good shit. Any last words, Rhys?
None from me tonight, mate, other than I don't know if you watched the Champions League final earlier and sort of won it.